Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Roundup. I am your usual host, David Fox. With me, as usual, as my co-host is the UberHansen. If you're wondering why we are decked out in a suit, or at least one of us is, it's because he's got the jacket on. He's got the
Yeah.
jacket on. He's more Billsy than I am. I just look more like Brandon Bean, who I'm desperately trying to imitate. Speaking of which, by the way, these sunglasses block a lot of light, a lot of that like UV blue light, that sort of stuff.
Mm.
So I'm basically blind right now, is what I'm saying. I can barely see what's going on the screen in front of me. So at some point I will take these off, but not anytime soon because I'm stubborn like that. Speaking of stubborn people, we're going to do a mock draft tonight, and we're going to pretend that we're Brandon Bean, and we're going to pretend that we know what we're doing, and it's going to be fantastic and amazing. But before we get any further, Uber, how are you?
Yeah, I mean, mock draft season's almost over and draft season's almost fully upon us. I am stoked for Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And I'm stoked that, we get to see the final mock drafts of people's and personalities and organizations and companies, etc., over the next couple of days.
I'm so I always feel this way around this time where I'm just like, the last 3 weeks of this draft cycle have just been completely unnecessary.
Yeah.
Skip ahead, simulate forward, whatever we gotta do. Just get us to Thursday night. I am so sick of seeing anonymous scout said this, somebody else said that. Blah. I'm over it. We've all heard it before. I swear, for like the fifth time, I got a notification from some site that was like, "Ooh, the Bears are looking to trade back with their second pick." It's like, yeah, no kidding. Astounding, brand new information coming my way. Thank you for that. Anyway, so I'm very excited for the draft to come up, and so we can finally see what's actually going to happen. Before we get any further, we have some business to take care of, and that starts, of course, with our friends Greg and Aaron over at the Cover One flagship show.
Many people ask us the best way to support us here at Cover One, and that is to sign up to become a Cover One Pass member. That contribution helps give us the access to all the data and information we use to create the content that you love.
And I think most importantly, brings you into our community of insiders. It's a great community based on Slack. I know a lot of people don't want to be on social media anymore or be in on those conversations. We bring all of it to you right in our great community of educated fans. And most importantly, you get access to our content creators.
Even better than that, everybody loves merch. You get awesome t-shirts, a cool decal, and a letter from the Cover One team signed directly to you.
All for $60. That gets you the entire season, next year's free agency and draft. $60. Click the link in the description. Cover One Insider. Become one today.
Thank you to Greg and Aaron for their immaculate reading on that. As always, the exact same every single time. Roy Collins says David looks like a failed FBI agent. Is that better or worse than a failed general manager? Because, like, a failed FBI agent kind of just fades into the background, I feel like, most of the time. Whereas a lot of failed GMs just sort of, like, get a job with, like, Bleacher Report or the 33rd Team or ESPN to just sort of say whatever. I don't know if that's better or worse. Yeah, it is what it is. I mean, I've seen Mark Dominic talk for a long time on ESPN. Joe DeRosa of Under Review, go watch Under Review. And he will also be one of our correspondents at Detroit at the draft come this weekend, so keep an eye out for him. I have joined in on the most chaotic episode of the Roundup era. Brother, no, you have not. The most chaotic episode, sir. Kyle Salagi used to be my co-host. We have it. This is not chaotic. This is just the standard. Like, what are we talking? Come on. So anyway, we're going to do a mock draft tonight. It's going to be fantastic. It's going to be amazing. And I'm sure everybody will think it is just that. And we will hear no negative critiques or comments saying otherwise. Before we get into that, we also... Oh my gosh, I swear these sunglasses are going to kill me. I cannot see. There we go. Okay. We're going to talk about our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. And I got to take the glasses off for that. Otherwise, I won't be able to read anything. Folks, are you ready for fantasy football season to start? If you just have that one home league and that one draft each year isn't enough for you, then Underdog Fantasy is for you. It's all the fun of drafting your own players, but without the waivers and lineup decisions. Best ball drafts allow you to have all the fun of drafting your team with all the chances to win big and none of the week-to-week hassle. If you use the promo code COVER1 when signing up to make your first deposit, Underdog will match that deposit up to $100. That is a free $100 in free play if you use promo code COVER1. Sign up today and start winning today. So we're going to go into this mock draft. We're going to be using Pro Football Focus. Because that's the one that seems to be most widely used, and I don't feel like going against the grain on that tonight. What is he saying now? Hold on. There's my mouse. There we go. That's why I said Airhead David. Of course. Roundup before Kyle and Roundup after Kyle.
That's pretty good.
Oh, I gotta clip that and send that to now. So we're gonna be using Pro Football Focus. We're gonna do all 7 rounds, and before anybody says anything, like I can already see and hear the comments now. By the time we get to our first pick at pick 28, we'll probably be like 30-40 minutes in before we actually make the pick. Guys, I promise you, we'll get through the draft. It will be fine. The first pick is always the one that takes the longest. Everything else will move a lot quicker. It'll be fine. Don't worry. We won't be here all night. You don't have to say it every time, which is probably not going to stop any of you from saying that. So yeah, it is what it is. That's fine. You're all allowed to do whatever you want. It's my podcast, but you're the commentators. So, Steve Noble says David looks like the guy trying to expose person's identity.
That's really good.
Oh, I gotta send that to him now. Ron Beck says I would not buy a car from David. I'm loving every single one of these. If anybody else has anything else, if you come in at some point during this show, just whatever your first thought is about what I'm wearing and what I look like, please send it. These are actually priceless. RJ Melville says David is definitely dressed as an FBI agent today. All right. So now that we've accurately described me from all different angles, Uber, are you ready to do this here mock draft? I gotta take this off now. I can't.
Let's get it going.
Oh, my eyes. Good lordy. All right, so we're gonna share screen. We're gonna do which screen is it? It's this screen, and we're gonna do that. And perfect. All right, here we go. So, like I said, we're going to be using PFF. We are only going to be doing our picks. And we're also going to be doing all 7 rounds. We're also not going to be doing any trades. So, if you're thinking, hey, Brandon Bean would move out of this spot, Brandon Bean would do this, do that with the trade, probably. Right? I don't expect the Bills to stay at 28, but for the purposes of this exercise, they are staying at 28 and 60, 128, 133, 144, 160, 163, 200, 204, and 248. So, deal with it.
Yeah, and also, as far as like the trades go in these simulators, just throwing one thing out there, the simulators are so off on any values of these trades. I saw one today that was, I don't remember which team, but I remember it was the Cardinals trading pick 27 this year for a first round pick next year. Like that's not going to happen. That makes no sense at all. So when I see trades in these, it's always like, yeah, obviously if a team offers you like the first overall pick for 3 of your draft picks, which is 144, 160, and 163, you're going to take it. But that's just so unrealistic, and it kind of skews the whole reason of these mock drafts.
Yeah, it's always tricky, and I will stipulate that if we get to a point before the Bills' first pick where this first round is just like off the rails, Caleb Williams going at like 10th overall or something stupid like that, we'll restart it. We'll get it where we're not going to do something that's just so off the walls that it provides basically 0 value. So yeah, it is what it is. But without further ado, let's get this mock draft rolling. All right, we're gonna pause after the first 5 picks. So we've got Caleb Williams at 1, JJ McCarthy at 2, Jaden Daniels at 3, Marvin Harrison Jr. at 4, and Dallas Turner to the Chargers at 5. I don't.
That would be an odd one.
It would be a very odd one, considering they have no wide receivers, and this team wants to run the ball, and I would think they would take offensive line or wide receiver. Edge feels odd. Do we want to? Do you want to just restart this?
Let's do a quick restart.
Let's do a quick restart. Let's do this now before it gets too weird. All right. So 7 rounds.
I think it's pretty well known that the Chargers are going to draft offensive line or wide receiver or trade back.
We're going to do that. We're going to sit here and say that was the most unrealistic thing that could have happened with the 5th overall pick, and that's exactly what they're going to do. And I'm going to clip it and say that we were totally right, and don't watch the rest of the show. So, all right. We're going to start the draft now again. All right, so we got Caleb Williams. Okay. All right. And we're going to stop there after 7 picks. So we got Caleb Williams at 1, Jaden Daniels at 2, Drake May at 3, Malik Neighbors at 4, Roma Dunze at 5, JJ McCarthy at 6, and Marvin Harrison Jr. at 7. Okay, so this seems a little more realistic. I don't think Malik Neighbors is the first guy off the board, but whatever. It is what it is. In any situation, like the 3 wide receivers being taken in the first 7 picks along with the 4 quarterbacks, that makes sense to me. I don't necessarily agree with the total order of things and who went where, but that's just how the draft works, actually. So I'm okay with this. Any thoughts from you?
No, I think that if this were to happen, as much as I think Bills fans, including myself, want a player like Roma Dunze, if this happened and the board fell this way, I think this is a good thing for the Bills if they're not going to trade up and get one of those guys, because you have 4 quarterbacks go, you have the top 3 wide receivers go, so now all these other players are falling down the board. So you're going to get really, really talented players falling to 28 at this point.
Yeah. I mean, totally. Roy Collins says, I read on Sporting News that BTJ, Brian Thomas Jr., has a left shoulder injury and may require surgery after 2024. Any thoughts as to whether the Bills could draft him anyway? I haven't heard anything about Brian Thomas Jr. injuries, shoulder, whatever. Maybe it's true. It may be something that he can play through in 2024. Which is fine with me. I like Brian Thomas Jr., even though he's a bit more on the raw side. I think his explosiveness and his athleticism is just too good to kind of pass up on. If he needs some sort of shoulder surgery, so be it. It's not anything I've heard of. So I would take that with a little grain of salt. It's very possible if that's true. Sometimes you get something that's like revealed on draft day when a guy starts to fall, like why is this guy falling, and then some Ian Rappaport, Adam Schefter guy will be like, well, it turns out there's this thing that wasn't super public, and it's like, of course. Santino Parlato says, go to settings, hit it, switch up the scales for each thing. I would have done that, except I chose not to. So we're going to keep going. Bills fan 7883 says, the closer you get to the draft, the more it seems like Xavier Worthy is the best choice if you want a receiver at 28. I don't hate Xavier Worthy. I like him more than Adonai Mitchell, but I would only feel okay about Xavier Worthy at 28.
Yeah. And that came up in the Cover One staff chat today, too. There was a little brief discussion about exactly that. I don't particularly like it, but if the Bills did it, I'd be like, yeah, that's great. But right now, saying it right now, I'm like, nah, I'm not into that. No.
Yeah, it's not my type of player. Obviously, the speed is a major thing that is attractive, but it's not necessarily the thing that I'm most attracted to. He also says Harbaugh and Greg Roman, it's going to be a guy in the trenches. That's my belief. But there's also just the sense of like they legit have no wide receivers on that roster that are worth playing right now, and I can't see that. I can't see them ignoring that. And obviously it's a deep wide receiver class, so they could do it later. But still, it says David looks like the raddest paralegal in the tri-state area. Thank you. Thank you. I agree. I totally play Imagine Dragons at my boss's conference events. Ron Peck says David is wearing the Joe Biden starter kit. JSZ says Uber's jacket reminds me of the question mark jacket that one guy with the get free money with the government commercials used to wear. I don't know what this is referring to. If you have a link, please send it. That would be great. My name is Jeff says it's a torn labrum, I assume referring to Brian Thomas Jr. Not sure about the surgery. Interesting. Sword Brother Joseph says trade up for Leggett in the second after you grab a stud defensive tackle or edge or safety. I'm okay with that too. All right, we're going to move on a little bit further into the draft. We'll probably stop around pick 15, see where we're at. We're going to go now. Okay. And let's stop there. Okay, so we've got Dallas Turner to the Falcons. That's a very common pick. Like, I feel like whoever does a mock draft, when they go to the Falcons, they're like, which edge do I like best, right? Whether it's Leatu Latu or Dallas Turner. I feel like Jared Verse has kind of been taken out of that conversation, though I'm not entirely sure why, but I'm not opposed to that either because I also like Jared Verse, and if he's there for the Bills, I'm okay with that. The number 9 pick goes to the Bears. It's Joe Alt from Notre Dame, offensive tackle. Very, very technically refined player that will help shore up that offensive line. The Jets take Talise Fuanga from Oregon State, another tackle. Third tackle, so there's a huge run on tackles here. Fashanu from Penn State, Olu Fashanu. At pick 12, the Denver Broncos, with their new uniforms and their new quarterback, Zach Wilson, give him someone to throw to in Brock Bowers. I could see that. Like, Sean Payton kind of seems like someone that would look at Brock Bowers and be like, I can make this work. I will make this guy 1,000-yard receiver in year one. And partially just because they don't have much outside of like Marvin Mims. J.C. Latham to the Raiders. Perfectly fine and reasonable for them. Probably better than taking a quarterback, even though like Aiden O'Connell should not be starting for them in like the year of our Lord 2024. But I'm not taking like a Bo Nix or a Michael Penix Jr. at 13 either. So it is what it is with that. The Saints get Byron Murphy at pick 14. Sure. Good for you, Saints. Good player for a good defense, and it will get you nothing else this year. You compare him with Brian Brisset or Breesy, whatever his name is from last year, and have a good old time on defense and still have a terrible offense. So, good for you. The Colts pick Terrion Arnold at 15. That seems to be another big consensus pick. It seems like it's like if Brock Bowers is at 15, the Colts will pick him. If not, then they'll take Terrion Arnold or Quinion Mitchell. You know, it's either a corner or Brock Bowers. It seems like in all these mock drafts for the Colts.
Bowers with Anthony Richardson would be fun to watch. Oh my goodness,
dude! I'm so excited to see what the Colts will look like. I have no idea if they'll be good or not, but a healthy Anthony Richardson with Josh Downs and Michael Pittman Jr. And hopefully a healthy Jonathan Taylor. I hope that happens, man. I'm so excited for that. The Seahawks get the aforementioned Jared Verse at 16. That would be good for them because they have a good interior defensive line. They're lacking at edge, so I think that would be a good place for them. Graham Barton to the Jaguars. That would be pretty good, I would think. You just have somebody that can come in and play right away, but also be a backup at multiple spots. It's a good thing for them. Quinion Mitchell to the Bengals, solid pick. Leatu Latu to the Rams, I like that for them. And Troy Fatanu to the Steelers, who, if you are not subscribed to or don't follow Brandon Thorne on Twitter, if you're not subscribed to his Substack, this is somebody that he is very, very high on. Go follow Brandon Thorne on Twitter if you want to know more about offensive linemen, period. You will learn a lot about offensive linemen, and as a result, a lot about the game of football. Uber, any thoughts on these picks as they have been made?
I mean, I don't really think there's many thoughts I necessarily have on this set of picks. I'll say Leatu Latu is becoming my like darling of this draft that I want really bad. I think he's a player that the Bills could pick that could completely change this defense. Just especially Brian Baldinger put out his clip of Latu, and it was just phenomenal to watch. He's this like elite level playmaker, and the only reason he's falling presumably is because of his injury concerns. And we talked about this a lot last week, so I won't dive too far into it. I will say though, the next pick that's up is the Dolphins.
Yes.
I think it's a no-brainer, who knows what they'll do in this specific simulator. It seems like a no-brainer to me that's Jackson Powers Johnson. If he falls to them, that's the exact player they need. They need a guy that can win on the minute. I know they signed Aaron Brewer.
They did.
But you can plug and play him there. Put Aaron Brewer to the bench. It doesn't matter. Or put him at guard. Put Jackson Powers Johnson at guard. They need to be better on the interior of the offensive line, not the exterior, because of how quick they throw.
I tend to agree with that. Let's see, what else are what are the people saying on here? Sore Brother Joseph says we need an X receiver, not another slot. Leggett or bust. We will discuss all of that in a bit. Let's see. Ron Beck says hopefully the Eagles and Falcons are stripped of their first round picks for tampering. That would drop 2 more really good players to us. The NFL should make a ruling in the next few days. I'd be surprised if they lost their first round picks for that. That seems like a lot. I doubt that would happen. But yeah.
The Dolphins did lose a first round pick for it with Brady. That was different.
True.
That was very different.
It was different.
But I don't know. I guess they'll dive into this more. Who knows? That'd be good for the Bills. It wouldn't be good for the Eagles. It wouldn't be good for the Eagles.
Yeah. You do what you can. And it's funny because I'm pretty sure the only reason people know that the Eagles may have tampered is because James Franklin, the Penn State coach, said something in a press conference, which is just so typical James Franklin. Very, very quick side story. A friend of mine went to a coaching conference in Atlanta like a month ago or some time ago. He said James Franklin was one of the speakers there, and he was like, just a total asshole. I'm like, oh, that makes so much sense. like everything I have assumed about James Franklin seems to be correct. So, RJ says, so far, all the mock drafts I've seen, if the Bills don't get a wide receiver with the first pick, doesn't have to be 28, it basically ruins the draft. Not having a third and having a late second kills us. I really disagree with that. I think there will be guys in the second that are available that are worth that pick. And I think because you have an extra fourth as a compensatory pick, you can use that and some of your other day 3 picks to trade up in the second if you really want a guy, in my opinion. So Ron Beck also says trading down makes a ton of sense. I'm all for that. There are no stud D linemen in this draft, says RJ Melville. It's like the 2014 class, but only for D linemen. I would say Jajon Newton is a total stud defensive lineman. I think that Braden Fiske is somebody that I like quite a bit on the interior defensive lineman. There's not a lot of edge, I'll give you that. I don't think there's a stud edge guy. Maybe that's Leatu Latu. Maybe. But there's also medical concerns with him as well. Yeah, I think Jackson Powers Johnson is like a big pick for the Dolphins. I would assume that would be a pick for them, assuming he falls there, which we are about to see right now. Okay, so take him there. And all right. Ooh. Oh, this is very interesting. This is a very interesting board. Okay, so all right. At pick 21, the Dolphins take Nate Wiggins. Okay. The Eagles take Cooper DeJean. Brian Thomas Jr. goes to the Vikings at 23. That's a fascinating pick. The Cowboys take Amarius Mims from Georgia, the offensive tackle. That makes sense for them. That seems like a very distinctly Cowboys type of pick, right? Like just big offensive linemen that can come in and basically take the reins from. Well, they'll have Tyler Smith at left tackle. They'll probably put Mims maybe at right tackle. Maybe they kick him into guard. I don't know. I don't know what the plan would be for Mims with the Cowboys. Pick 25, the Packers take A.D. Mitchell. That seems odd, right? That seems a little odd. I don't see the Packers doing that. That seems like a very non-Packers pick to make to me.
Yeah. They already have like a solid trio, if not quad of receivers. I don't know why they'd spend that pick of young players
Cool.
too. I don't know why they'd spend
Yeah.
that pick on a wide receiver.
Chop Robinson to the Bucks. I kind of see that. I could see that happening. Tyler Guyton, an offensive tackle from Oklahoma, goes to the Cardinals, which leaves quite a few very interesting players on the board for the Bills. So last week when we had our draft analyst John Helmkamp on here, he had a good long soapbox speech about why the Bills should take Jackson Powers Johnson. And I tend to agree with him quite a bit because Jackson Powers Johnson is a very, very good player, provides a lot of positional versatility on the inside. Anything that's going to keep Josh Allen upright and help you out in the run game by doing different things in the run game is something I'm all for. On the other hand, though, Jer'Zhan Newton, is a very, very good player and a very, very fun player as well. Now, is there a question about, you just paid Ed Oliver, you have Daquan Jones, you have Austin Johnson, Jer'Zhan Newton is not like this big, guy that's going to be like the typical one tech that I think people would want. However, he's just a good player. And I think people sort of look at him and assume based on size that he's going to be this penetrating up the field, like attacking defensive tackle. And I think that that's fair because he can do that. And I think he can do that well, but I think he can also two gap really well. I think this is just a really, really good player. And I'm surprised he's not getting as much hype as I think he should in this class. The only other player on here is right here at Kool-Aid McKinstry. And I would be interested in Kool-Aid McKinstry if these other two guys weren't here. And I would only be okay with Kool-Aid McKinstry if, there were no trade offers. There was nothing else going on. Like, you had to stay at 28 and pick a guy. I would be fine with Kool-Aid McKinstry, but I'd much to me, it's Jer'Zhan Newton or Jackson Powers Johnson. Uber, who are you thinking?
So here's where I'm at with this. Jer'Zhan Newton, like you said, like a talented football player, but the size coupled with Ed Oliver's size is concerning to me just because you don't have that kind of beefcake in the middle of your defensive line, right? They're both hovering around 300 pounds, maybe a little over, maybe a little lower. And then on top of that, we have this really, really small linebacking core. That's another factor in this for me. Is you have Matt Milano, you have Terrell Bernard. Let's say Dorian Williams kind of comes into his own at some point in time, and maybe he gets some reps here and there. But let's just talk about Bernard and Milano. They're small. They're not big linebackers. They're never going to be big linebackers. So you need someone to keep the opposing offensive line off of them. I don't know if the combination of Newton and Ed Oliver can do that consistently enough to make me comfortable. That being said, you have two guys that can absolutely dominate in the middle of the defensive line. As for Jackson Powers Johnson, and we talked about this a lot last show, so again, I won't go super deep into this. I believe he is automatically day one an upgrade over Connor McGovern because I don't know what Connor McGovern is, and I can't fathom that he's this great center, but I know he's a really good left guard. So why not put him at left guard and then Jackson Powers Johnson at center, and then suddenly we could have a better offensive line this year than we did last year. But going back to Jer'Zhan Newton, the biggest issue the Bills have had in the playoffs is interior pressure. They can't get pressure up the interior, which is kind of concerning, especially when you look at Ed Oliver and how good he is. Why doesn't he show up more consistently in the playoffs? If you put Jer'Zhan Newton and Ed Oliver there and say, run the ball on us, just do that. You can run the ball on us all day, but we're going to go after your quarterback and get after them, and you got to beat Josh Allen in a shootout. I like that idea. And I like the idea of getting faster on the defensive line, and that's what Newton does.
We talked a ton about Jackson Powers Johnson last week. I would be totally into that pick if they made it. But somebody like a Jer'Zhan Newton, I mean, so Joe DeRosa brings up a really good point here, right? Newton or JPJ, I'm going JPJ because I trust Cromer's development ability. It's a great point to bring up, but also that to me feels like more of a case to not take Jackson Powers Johnson. In the same way that we talk about McDermott and in the past with Leslie Frazier being able to coach up a lot of defensive backs wherever they've been taken and wherever they come from. I feel that same sort of way about Aaron Cromer and offensive linemen, to at least coach them up to a level that's league average, which not a lot of teams tend to have. And so if you miss out on a Jackson Powers Johnson, then okay, I feel confident that at some point they'll take at least one, if not a couple of offensive linemen in this draft, and they'll just coach them up and give them to Aaron Cromer and say, go do what you do.
Yeah.
And I don't feel that same way about the defensive line, because it's hard to get big guys that move. It's hard to find really good large men that can move and be effective and strong, especially in the middle, right? Which is why somebody like Jer'Jon Newton, who at this point should not be available at pick 28, and I'd be very, very surprised if he were. Heck, I'd even be surprised if he makes it out of the top 10. Part of me wants to believe that he's just going to go to Atlanta at 8. But if he doesn't, and he falls, and he falls, and he falls, and he falls all the way to 28, you're gonna have to stop me from like reaching into my TV screen and just writing the pick on the card myself for Jer'Jon Newton. I understand the feeling of wanting Jackson Powers Johnson. I agree with those feelings, but my feelings for Johnny Newton are higher. And if you don't have strong feelings about like one way or the other, I think I'm gonna take Jer'Jon Newton here.
I'll add one more thing too.
Go for it.
I was just thinking about this. There could be some fun sub packages for the Bills that involve Jer'Jon Newton, Ed Oliver, and Daquan Jones, and then you throw out someone like Greg Rousseau there, and then you're beefy on that defensive line. You have extra beef there, and you have pass rush ability. Like, there's some tricky things Sean McDermott could do with a player like him to get him on the field more. I am with you here. Like, a talented player that probably shouldn't fall to 28. I like Jackson Powers Johnson a lot. I will not be upset if you click draft on Jer'Jon Newton.
Do some quick comments here. RJ says everyone overthinks the draft and wants a defensive tackle that will play 30% of the snaps at a position that we have starters and backups at. Center will be an issue and wide receiver is a major issue. I think if you draft Jer'Jon Newton, you're playing him more than 30% of the snaps. And I don't want to hear, oh, but Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott don't play their rookies. Yes, they do. Look at the draft. Look at who they've played. Look at I don't want to hear that narrative. That's dumb. We've debunked that. It's bunk. It's done. It's yesteryear. I don't want to hear that. Also, just as an FYI, for those who have joined a little bit later in the show, who may be saying trade down. Listen, I'm all for trading down from this spot. I am 100% in on trading down from this spot. But for the purposes of this particular mock draft and this exercise, we are staying at each one of our picks. So trading down is not what we're going to do, even though that's something we'd like to do.
I would also, if this was the board, like with those three names right there, I think I'd be upset if the Bills traded down and didn't take.
Honestly, yeah. I mean, that this is part of it. Like trading down, if Newton and JPJ were gone, I think that's a possibility. You know, maybe guys like Chop Robinson and Adonai Mitchell are available, right? Like that's certainly a possibility. Or Nate Wiggins, you know, whatever. Maybe JPJ goes to the Dolphins and Nate Wiggins is available, whatever. But like if neither of those two guys are available, and this is more or less what this looks like besides those two guys, yeah, trade down. But with those two guys available, it changes things. And you're not going to keep me from drafting Johnny Newton if he's there, honestly. Man, it's just very quickly. Ian says, I just realized Hansel is wearing a blazer and not just a Bills themed shirt, and I need a link to buy that right about now. Yeah, we'll see if we can drop that later. Yeah, a lot of people saying trade down. I get it, but yeah, we're gonna go with Johnny Newton at 1 or at 28 rather, with the 28th overall pick in the 2024 Cover 1 Roundup Final Mock Draft 3.0. The Buffalo Bills select Jer'Jon Newton. And away we go. And we're going to stop. So we've got Kool-Aid McKinstry going to the Lions at 29. Darius Robinson, the edge from Missouri, is going to the Ravens at 30. Jordan Morgan from Arizona, offensive tackle, going to the San Francisco 49ers, and Kingsley Suamataia is going to the Chiefs, another offensive tackle. Oh my gosh, how many tackles were taken in this first round? We got 1, 2, 3, 4, like 5, 6. No, Barton's not a tackle. 6, 7, 8, like 9 tackles. 9 tackles. That's crazy. Oh my gosh. Okay, so first pick of the second round, and the Panthers' first pick of this draft, they take Zach Frazier from West Virginia. I could see that happening. But they do still have Brady Christensen, although that was not somebody that this particular regime drafted. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see about that. We're gonna keep moving on. Okay. Oh, that hurts. That stings. Oh, I don't know if anyone else saw that, but that stung. That stung a bit. All right, we're gonna pause right now. Okay. So, the Patriots get Jackson Powers Johnson. Yeah, that stings. That stings.
Yeah, be good.
It doesn't change my mind, but that stings. Sometimes good players end up with teams you don't want them to. That's
Who's the quarterback they took in this too? Who's the quarterback?
They took Jaden Daniels. So.
Oh, Drake May.
Right. They took Drake May. Just like I said, they took Drake.
Yeah. Drake May and Jackson Powers Johnson as your first 2 picks. I think that's a pretty good start.
Plus, like an actual offensive coordinator calling plays and putting your offense together, like that. Yeah, that's tough. That's tough. It's a tough pill to swallow. But they're still the Patriots right now. The Cardinals get Xavier Worthy. Okay. All right. Sure. Why not? Patrick Paul to the Commanders. Sarah Still, the cornerback from Michigan, goes to the Chargers. I could 100% see this happen, right? Between Harbaugh and the defensive coordinator coming from Michigan to the Chargers, I could 100% see this happening. Man, I don't even know if I've really seen that a ton. I almost feel like this is a lock now. Like if I'm gonna like shoot my shot, I'd be like, 37, Mike Sanders still. I feel pretty good about saying that. Kamari Lassiter, cornerback from Georgia, goes to Tennessee. Peyton Wilson goes to the Panthers. He's a linebacker from NC State. Max Melton, corner from Rutgers, goes to Washington. And it's Rakestraw, corner. So a lot of corners coming off early in the second round. He goes to Green Bay. They already have a lot of corners. That seems odd. Although they did obviously trade away Rasul Douglas to the Bills last year. So maybe they feel like they need to get another guy to be younger there. Keon Coleman goes to the Houston Texans. That seems a little odd. They have 3 legit wide receivers right now with Diggs and Dell and Nico Collins. Yeah. I can't imagine them taking yet another receiver to be wide receiver 4 for them on their team right now.
Plus Dalton Schultz too.
Plus Dalton Schultz. Yeah, that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
Let's see. Xavier Legette goes to the Falcons at 43. Maybe. There's potential where they take another skill guy high. I don't know how high the possibility of that is, but I can like fathom that. I can kind of imagine that, even if I think it's unlikely. The Raiders at pick 44 get their quarterback, who has been mocked to them in the first round. This would be a much better place to take Michael Penix Jr., especially if you're taking J.C. Latham. Yeah, at pick 13. Yeah, that's a much better draft than taking Michael Penix at 13 and then taking whoever at 44. So that's a good thing for them. Jalen Polk, wide receiver from Washington, goes to the Saints. Okay. Jonathan Brooks, running back, goes to the Colts. I don't see that happening. Troy Franklin to the Giants. That makes sense to me. They took J.J. McCarthy in the first round. Tyler Nubbin. I
think it's Nubin.
I think it is Nubin. But I'm going to call him Nubbin because that sounds funnier. Jatavian Sanders from Texas goes to the Bengals. They do need a tight end. All right. Bills pick at 60, so there's 10 more picks. I think there's still wide receivers available. In fact, one of those wide receivers that's available would be fan favorite Lad McConkey And if Lad McConkey is available at pick 60, and I don't anticipate him actually being available at pick 60, someone's going to snipe this. I don't know who, but someone's going to snipe this from us. But if he makes it to 60, I'll be pretty ecstatic. All right, here we go. Okay. Yeah. And there's the run on wide receiver, and there we go. Okay, so at pick 50, the Eagles take Ricky Pearsall from Florida, wide receiver. At 51, the Steelers take Lad McConkey from Georgia. I like that pick for them a lot. Bo Nix. Oh, okay. This is actually a very interesting pick. This is Bo Nix, quarterback from Oregon, goes to the Rams at pick 52. That is a fascinating pick to me. You obviously have Stafford, who is coming off of one of his best seasons as a quarterback, which is saying something. Mm-hmm. He was phenomenal last year in a season where it was like, hey, he might retire. Like, he probably should retire because it sounds like his shoulder is falling off or something. But Bo Nix being somebody that you could maybe sit for a year behind Stafford, get him to learn this offense for a bit, and then Stafford can kind of just, ride off into the sunset, have a little fun. Maybe Cooper Kupp goes with him. Who knows? He's kind of getting old too. Man, that's a really fast. That's a very sort of like, it's not quite the same situation as the Eagles taking Jalen Hurts when they had Carson Wentz, but it's a similar vibe, right? It's just like, we have a guy here, but like, yeah, that's a really interesting one.
They also have Stetson Bennett wherever he gets back from.
Where's Stetson Bennett, though? Does anyone know? Can anyone tell us where Stetson Bennett is right now? Where in the world is Carmen Sands Stetson Bennett? Like, I don't know where he is right now. The Eagles double dip at wide receiver and take Roman Wilson. That's not happening. That's not happening. That's not going to happen. The Browns take Chris Jenkins from Michigan, shore up their defensive line, which makes perfect sense when Jim Schwartz is your defensive coordinator. Roger Rosengarten, tackle. Oh my gosh, so many. This tackle class is stupid deep. It really is. Yeah. It's important to take that now, to understand that now, so that when you get into this draft later this week, you'll see something pretty similar, I imagine, where there's just so many tackles that are taken with these first 60 picks. Braden Fiske goes to the Cowboys. Adisa Isaac, edge. The Bucks double dip at edge. This is very weird. This is why I don't like doing mock drafts. And
everybody's doing it.
That's right. It's not just the Bills.
We started a trend, man.
We started a trend that only came back a couple years later. Kieran, oh my gosh.
Yeah,
someone's got to tell me. No, I'm not. I can't. I'm going to feel bad. Kieran.
Don't do it. Yeah,
Kieran Amegdaji. Someone tell me how bad that is. Amegaji. I'm going to say it's Amegaji. Tackle from Yale. That seems... I've not heard of this person.
Me either.
Okay, cool. It's not just me. Jonah Ellis, edge from Utah, goes to the Texans at 59. Okay, so here's where we're at. Let's look at wide receiver because that's where we want to go. So, despite getting sniped by the Eagles and the Steelers for guys like Ricky Pearsall and Lad McConkey and Roman Wilson, there are still guys that I like here. And one of those guys is Javon Baker. Now, the PFF board has him at 78. I think there are people who are much, much higher on Javon Baker than PFF is, which is not super surprising. I like Javon Baker. I think he has the ability to turn into that X receiver that Bills fans really like and want right now. But given the way that the Bills offense is currently constructed, it's not like necessary for him to be like a, 1,000-yard type receiver right away. So I think this is a good spot for Javon Baker if they decide to take him. Jermaine Burton is an interesting one. Malachi Corley is an interesting player. Tez Walker is somebody who was a hot name last year before he transferred from Kent State to North Carolina, where he wasn't as effective. Some of that is just structure of North Carolina's very, very stupid offense, but that's neither here nor there. I feel decent enough about Tez Walker where I wouldn't love taking him at pick 60 though. But I like Javon Baker a lot. Are there any other positions you want to look at other than wide receiver?
I see. In general, I'd say yes in the draft, but I truly do believe that the Bills need to take a wide receiver in the first 2 days.
That's my
to
feeling.
me, like, yeah, if they take Jerzon Newton in the first round, which is a defensive lineman, I almost can guarantee that they are taking a wide receiver in the second round, or they're trading for a wide receiver. And at this point, I'd probably prefer them trade or draft a wide receiver than trade for most wide receivers. There's a couple that I'd be willing to trade for, but yeah, and I'm with you, Javon Baker here. That he's the name that sticks out to me. The other one's not really super excited about. Javon Baker, like you said, has the ability to be that X or could kind of mold into that. And then in the meantime, you still have Curtis Samuel and Khalil Shakir and Dalton Kincaid going to be the main guy. Yeah. So I actually think picking Javon Baker at pick 60 is a solid pick for the Bills. And I think they also did bring him in on a top 30 meeting.
I believe so. I believe that is the case. But yeah, I really like Javon Baker here. It just sort of seems like the type of pick they would make. It's a receiver that I like. It's a receiver. It's a position of need without reaching for it, despite what PFF's ranking is trying to tell us all. Unless there are any other objections, I'm taking Javon Baker at this pick.
And Bills fans love UCF receivers, right?
Oh, obviously. So with the 60th pick in the 2024 final Cover 1 Roundup Mock Draft 3.0 for the Buffalo Bills, they select Javon Baker, wide receiver from UCF. Go Knights. And that is in the books, and that is the end of round 2. The last 4 picks, Christian Haynes to the Lions. Man, that's a good pick for them. Javon Bullard from Georgia, safety, goes to the Ravens. Chris Braswell, edge from Alabama, goes to the Niners. Blake Corum goes to the Chiefs, halfback from Michigan. Okay. So we will try to move through the rest of this draft a little bit quicker. It should go a little bit quicker because we're not going to be quite as knowledgeable and in depth about who is available at certain points. So right now we'll take us comments from you all. By the way, over 100 people watching. Thank you all. If you are watching and enjoying what you're seeing, or you're just kind of whatever about this, go leave a like anyway. It helps the channel. It helps us out. It helps spread us out on the algorithm. So we appreciate all of you watching and participating and commenting, and we're gonna get to some of those comments now. Roy Collins says, over 70% of McConkey's snaps in college were on the boundary, but that was college. That's fair. It's fair, but the college he was playing at was the University of Georgia, and the conference he was playing in was the SEC. I hate being the type of guy that's like, the SEC is the best conference, but the SEC is the best conference. Like, he's going against Alabama, he's going against Florida, he's going against NFL guys. And if he's doing that against future NFL guys, I would think he can do that against current NFL guys. Mm-hmm. So that I understand that's a thing with Ladd McConkey. Like, is he a slot? Is he a boundary? I think he's a boundary. I understand wanting to put him in the slot, but I think he's capable of being on the boundary. Joe DeRosa says, why did Philly take Ricky, PP, and Roman? Great question, and something that no one will ever have to answer because they're never, ever going to do that. He also says, this is Javon Baker territory. I agree. This is Noon Alvarez. Interesting. Not drafting a wide receiver at 28th and staying still at 60 means there's none left. Disagree, because we just took Javon Baker, and I feel pretty good about that.
Left.
There were actually a couple left, and I don't feel great about all of them, but I feel good about Javon Baker at that pick. You either draft one at 28 or you trade up from 60. I'm fine with trading up, right? Like, once we got to 50, I mean, we were both okay with, like, hey, maybe you trade up for McConkey if you feel strongly about him, or maybe you trade up to, like, 43 and get, like, a Xavier Legette, maybe. I'm okay with trading up in the second round, but for the purposes of this exercise, we're staying at our picks. So, let's see, yeah. What else? What else? Ian says Stetson Bennett in whatever hunting cabin Carson Wentz is also hiding out collecting a check-in. Carson Wentz is on a roster though right now, isn't he? Carson Wentz got
He
signed.
signed with the Chiefs, I think, right?
Yes, yes, he did. He did. God, so funny, amazing. He was okay in that one game he had with the Rams last year, though. He was okay.
Yeah.
He was fine. Malachi Corley is the best pick here. There's a lot of questions about Malachi Corley. It's a lot of questions. A former running back. The yak is there, and that is the big reason to take Malachi Corley, right? And especially for this team that has lacked a lot of yards after the catch. I understand the thought process here, and I agree with that thought process. However, somebody who's really raw at receiver, I'm not super in on. I get a funny vibe, and that's not a good process in order to do this with, but I get a funny vibe from Malachi Corley. He could be the pick, I don't know, but I don't know if I would call him the best pick here. Bills fan 7883 says, in my opinion, if you're Bean, you want to chase this draft. Use your forts and on, since you have so many of them, to continue to leapfrog your way up the draft, eyeing talent and covet and getting 8-ish guys. Sure, that does tend to be his MO, right?
Yeah.
Is getting up and getting his guys. But I think there's also a chance to say, like, hey, you don't have to do that and also get players that you like. Right now, getting Jerjon Newton and Javon Baker with your first 2 picks, I would be super happy with that if I'm a Bills fan come this weekend. Let's see. Mike Malley Guitar says, are we not reaching 14 spots on Walker and Burton? You know, this is the unfortunate part of this Bills draft, is that maybe you're reaching a little bit on a guy here in the second round, but he's not going to be available with your 4th round pick, and you don't have a 3rd round pick. So you get the guy that you think, you know, you're going to be pissed off if you don't get him later, essentially, because he's not going to be available at that pick in the 4th round. I forget. No, it was the Rams. It was another Rams sort of behind the scenes in last year's draft, where they're discussing, you know, who are we taking with this pick? Who are we taking with this pick? And Sean McVay was sort of just like facilitating this conversation. He was like, all right, who's a guy that is on the board right now that if we pass on him now, we're going to be pissed off because we know he's going to be gone by the time our next pick comes around. And they all agreed it was, who was their guy from Oklahoma last year? Let me have my producer look this up. My producer is me, and I'm currently stalling. Kobe Turner, that's who it was. Yeah, who was great for them last year. Kobe Turner was a very good player for them last year. And they all sort of said, like, yeah, I mean, it probably is this guy. And he's just like, listen, if this is the guy you feel strongly about, if this is the guy you feel good about in this defense that we're doing, that should be the guy, you know, and we shouldn't feel bad about taking a guy like that. And I think at this point, they feel pretty confident about that. So,
I also think there's like another part to this too, right? So I think a lot of people are like, well, the Bills can just trade up. Like, we'll just trade back into the 3rd round, et cetera. I don't think that's as easy as fans are making it out to be. So for instance, pick 128 plus 133 is valued at about pick 100, the very last pick in the 3rd round. So you'd have to trade multiple picks just to get into the late 3rd round. So you're still going to have a massive distance between 60 and whatever that is. Maybe you fall back from 60, but like you said, if you fall back from 60, there's probably going to be some of those players that, like a Javon Baker, that just isn't there if the Bills fall back to 72, 73, something like that. So as much as the trading up, trading down, all that sounds fun, the Bills, from an asset standpoint, all those late round picks don't really equate to much higher in the draft. So for the most part, it kind of makes sense with those 128, 133, and 144. Use those later picks to try to move up a little on those. Don't use all of those 4ths to try to move up in the 2nd. But at the same time, I can see past where the Bills say, we can move up from 28 because we have a extra 2nd round pick next year, using things like that. So like we said at the start of this too, I don't think either of us expect the Bills to take all of these picks and use every single one of them, nor do I think we expect the Bills to sit pat probably at 28 and 60. They're going to move one way or another with at least one of those.
Yeah. Mike Mallon Guitars says, you won't take Franklin or Leggett because they're a reach at 60, but you reach on Baker at 60. I don't think I said either of those things. Troy Franklin went to the Giants at pick 47, and Leggett went to the Falcons at 43.
Yeah.
And I'd be totally fine with either of those at pick 60. And I'd also be fine with Javon Baker at pick 60. So
if you had, so on that topic, if you had those 3 players sitting there at 60,
Sure.
which one would you take?
Leggett. I pretty confidently. And I like Troy Franklin. And I like Javon Baker. I like any one of those guys, but I think Leggett is the most interesting of those 3 and the biggest upside of those 3.
And has like the physicality and the size to compete on the edge. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Also, just that beautiful, deep Southern accent. If you have not heard Xavier Leggett talk, go look up Xavier Leggett interview. Man's good old country boy. God bless America and all the ships at sea. Just a good old fashioned country boy. GW says, I'm glad these 2 have nothing to do with the Bills draft. Hey, me too. Do you think I'd want to do this? Do you think this is something I'd want to do? It would. I would totally take the money to be the decision maker for the Bills. But also, it's a lot of stress.
I would have drafted Josh Rosen, so I wouldn't be here doing this anyway. I would have hired a long time ago. So, I'm happy I'm not doing it either.
Yeah. Can we see the big board? Unfortunately, I'm not sure you can because of the way that PFF has this all put together. I think you can only see the board when you're making a pick, which is really stupid. And I wish they wouldn't do that, but yeah. Go try telling PFF that something is wrong with them because they won't listen. Let's see. Steve Noble says this is a really bad draft to be going into a gunfight with knife quality draft capital. That's a really drawn out metaphor, but yes, I think I agree with that.
It's taking me a minute to really get that wrapped around my brain.
Dirty Jersey says, did the Bills meet with Jermaine Burton? Did they meet with Burton? Have they?
So there's a guy on Twitter who made a really, really awesome top 30 meeting or like used all of the things. I'm trying to find that right now, but I'm not sure.
Okay, fair enough. Let's see. What else do we got here? What else are people saying? What are people saying here? I can read, right? Cespinar says, how do you feel about that CFL corner in rounds 4, 5, and 6? Sure. Why not? I don't know. I mean, I know who you're talking about. I know this is somebody that the Bills looked at recently.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But, like, take a defensive back in rounds 4, 5, and 6. Sure. Take a chance. Take a stab at a defensive back. That's exactly what this team does pretty much every year. So why not that guy? Ryan Baldwin says...
Quantez Stiggers.
Yes, that's the guy.
Yeah.
After the big 3, there is not a wide receiver who's going to step up and be wide receiver 1. Bill's receiving core will be made up of 2s and 3s, along with great pass catchers at running back and tight end. I'd take a Verse or Latu over Brian Thomas Jr. I would probably agree with that, honestly. And I like Brian Thomas Jr. I'd be totally fine with if that's the pick. But we've talked about this, where, like, you know, maybe this is an offense that is evolving and doesn't feel the need to have like a bona fide wide receiver 1, or they feel like their wide receiver 1 is basically just Dalton Kincaid, and that's fine because I think Kincaid is capable of that kind of target share, of that kind of catch numbers. Like I think that's a very, very reasonable thing to say.
I think you need a trio. So I actually kind of did the math on Twitter. I think yesterday or 2 days ago. I think that Kincaid has over 1,000 receiving yards this year. I think he's that good. And then I also think that James Cook has about 400, and Dawson Knox, and people are going to disagree with this, I think Dawson Knox has about 400. So right there, I'm at 1,800. If my trio of wide receivers in Khalil Shakir, Curtis Samuel, and probably a rookie can get to 2,400 yards, so that's 800 apiece, you're already at 4,200, which is Josh Allen's number. So I am perfectly comfortable with the Bills not having some superstar at wide receiver because I think they have a budding superstar at tight end.
Yeah. Let's see. Mac Malley says that was a typo. Why not take Franklin or Leggett at 28? Because I don't feel that strongly about either of them at 28. I'm willing to kind of sit at that point, especially even if like the reason we didn't take those guys is not just because like I don't feel super strongly about them as like at that pick, but also because Johnny Newton was available at 28, and I didn't think Johnny Newton was going to be available after like pick 10 or something. Like a lot of that pick is not, oh well, there's no one I really like, I guess I'll take Johnny. No, that pick was made because I am a big fan of Johnny Newton, and I would love to have Johnny Newton on this defense. It's not about I don't like these guys enough. It's that Johnny Newton is that type of guy. Charles G says, who we got so far? Johnny Newton at round 1 and Javon Baker in round 2. So I feel pretty good so far. All right. I don't think I have anything else to say. I've already talked enough. Let's keep going. Andrew Phillips, quarterback from Kentucky to the Panthers. Let's resume this draft. It's going to be 3rd round. We're going to go through the entire, basically going to go right until the next Bills pick. So that'll be late 4th round. Some guys that I like are gone. Seeing the Dolphins with a forfeited pick is very funny to me.
Another one.
Yes, apparently. Jamari Thrash and Jacob Cowing both go. Kate Stover, okay. Let's see. Isaiah Davis, Brandon Rice, Cam Kitchens. Okay. All right. Bills are on the clock. Some interesting players are available. Okay. All right. I kind of like this. All right. What position do you want to look at first? Do you want?
So for the sake of doing it, because sure. I think it's possible, I would click wide receiver. I just want to see who's there.
Sure. Yeah, Isaiah Williams from Illinois, Luke McCaffrey from Rice, Cornelius Johnson, Jaquan Jackson, Jalen Coker from Holy Cross, and Marcus Rosemy Jack Saint. Wow.
Yeah, we can move on to a different position.
Yeah. So 2 guys that are popping out at me are the first 2 names, Braylon Allen and Audric Estime, halfbacks. I like both of these guys. Braylon Allen is a kind of, both of these guys would be very interesting to me because they would complement what James Cook does as a runner really, really well. I would feel better about Braylon Allen than I would about Audric Estime, just because I feel like Audric Estime is more of like an overall kind of jack of all trades, almost like a Devin Singletary type, where I'm not entirely sure of if he has like a high level strength in his game. He just does a lot of things really, really well. Whereas with Braylon Allen, I'm like, this dude is going to be the guy they wanted, like Latavius Murray, Damian Harris to be, rather than and now you have him for pretty cheap. Like a 4th round pick is pretty nice, honestly. Do you have thoughts between those 2?
I have a more, I guess, overall thought here that I think that the board actually fell pretty well for the Bills here, because I see 4 players that I would have some interest in, and 2 of them we'd probably have to talk through a little bit more. But I think it's valuable because the Bills are at pick 128 and 133. So I think there's a possibility that you could have one guy at 128 and you're going to be able to get the other position at 133, and the other position being safety, right? So to me, it's you pick the best of those 4 at 128, and then you see what happens at 133, and you probably get another one. So if you just click on safety right now. So one, Cole Bishop, I have some interest in, and then Malik Mustafa. There's actually 3 now, and Sion Vaki. The only concern, and I just looked this up with Cole Bishop, and one of the notes on his scouting report here is desire to make plays causes him to vacate coverage zones. I don't like that line when it comes to the Bills defense. It's not saying that defines who he is as a football player, and I'm sure Sean McDermott could coach him up, but that was one thing that kind of jumped out to me.
I think that's fair. I think so. You look at the teams in between where the Bills' 2 picks are, right? You have the Vikings, the Ravens, the Chiefs, the Niners. The odds that all 4 of these teams are at those spots come draft time, probably pretty low, right? Like there's going to be a lot of trades by this point of the day. Somebody is probably coming into or out of this spot. So I think it's good that there are, at least to my eyes, 5 players that I feel good about taking with these 2 picks. And I like Braylon Allen. I like Sione Vaki and Cole Bishop. I like Malik Mustafa. And I even like Tanner Bortolini from Wisconsin. I think he can be somebody that gets coached up by Aaron Cromer really well. Let me see. Who's available at edge? Okay, so there's Mohamed Kamara, who's interesting. And given that the Bills have a needed edge, do you feel like this is a possibility as well?
So when looking at these positions, especially because you're in the 4th round of the draft, the way I'm trying to think about this is who has the easiest path to playing time, right?
Sure.
And while I think that the Bills do need an edge in theory, because they really only have 3 at this point with Von Miller, Greg Rousseau, and AJ Epinesa, I do think that the drafting of Johnny Newton in the 1st round, like I said, there could be sub packages where he's going to be on the field taking the spot of an edge rusher. I wonder if you're going to get enough snaps out of Kamara. And it's still, this is in the 4th round. Fine. This is a fine pick. You
Sure.
pick the guy with the greatest upside.
Yeah.
But the Bills have a legitimate need at RB2. Like, that's a need. I like Ty Johnson as a football player, but he's not. I'd prefer somebody with a little bit more talent at that position.
I agree with that. And part of me wonders if they go back after the draft and look at somebody in free agency for that spot. It's possible. But that's not our focus right now. Our focus is what would we do in this situation. It sounds like you're really leaning towards running back, and Braylon Allen or Audric Estime. Make your pick. I'll let you pick this one. I will not
No.
Make a pick. Make a pick.
All right. The name that I've heard more, and I think even Eric from Cover One has kind of hit on, is Estime as the guy. Like, he's a solid football player. So I think I'd lean him.
Let's do it. With the 128th overall pick in the 2024 Cover One Roundup Mock Draft 3.0, the Buffalo Bills take Audric Estime, running back from Notre Dame. Alrighty. And, wow, look at that. All these players that we wanted are still available. Crazy how that works. the Vikings take Chris Abrams-Drain. Jarvis Brownlee Jr. goes to the Ravens. Isaiah Adams and Caden Wallace go to the Chiefs and Niners, respectively. All right. Who do you like? Who are you wanting in this spot? One of the safeties? Do you feel like getting a safety now will be better than getting a safety later?
The thing that concerns me is Taylor Rapp and Mike Edwards are our safeties right now.
Correct.
I don't love that. I don't hate it. I mean, I think it is what it is. Like, it'll be fine. It's not great. If the Bills love one of these guys, then that's the pick. If not, then you go back to Kamara, the edge, or you go to the center that you have right up there right now, and you draft him. So the edge is enticing, though, because I do think if you took an edge right now, is that better than Casey Toohill?
I don't know. And I think that regardless of that, I think you need to think about edge for the future. Because you obviously have Von Miller, who's an older player. You have AJ Epinesa, who's only on a 2-year contract. And Casey Toohill is only on a 1-year deal. Maybe they like him and they bring him back. I don't know. But regardless of if they do or don't, like, Casey Toohill only has so much upside as a player, right? And, like, Mohamed Kamara is going to be limited just because of his size. In fact, this is actually probably a good breakdown from PFF's scouting report. Kamara is an outlier for an edge player in terms of his measurables. He's 6'1". He's below the 5th percentile for all NFL edge rushers, which comes with pros and cons. He can explode out of a low loaded stance with good pad level to fuel his preferred move, which is a bull rush. The cons are he has a lack of length. It makes it more difficult for him to press through offensive linemen in his bull rush. It holds him back from getting off blocks. He's a strong player, and his motor is always running hot. Okay, so that's an interesting player to me, especially in the 4th round, especially in a class that doesn't have a ton of edge guys. Whereas, again, we've talked about this with McDermott teams before. There's safeties. There's going to be safeties available, and yeah, the guys from Utah and Malik Mustafa are very interesting. Totally fine with taking those guys if you feel that strongly about it. But taking an edge right now, I mean, look at the rest of this group. Is there anyone else available in this group that you would say, hey, I'm totally cool with taking that guy? Whereas at safety, I mean, you've got Vaki, you've got Bishop, you got Mustafa. They'll probably all be gone by the time of the Bills' next pick. You've also got Josh Proctor. You've got Bo Braid. You've got James Williams. You got Trey Taylor. There are guys available at safety.
I mean, to your point, who is more likely to be gone? Let's say by pick 144, and I think it's Kamara.
Yeah.
Then all three of those first safeties you mentioned. I do hesitate because he's only 6'1", and that is concerning for an edge. But you go for the home run ball, and he has college production, like big time production in college. I actually, that's where I'd be leaning now, probably.
I think he's worth a dice roll, and I think he is genuinely a dice roll. Maybe he is somebody that can, turn in like 8 sacks as like a rotational edge guy, which is what they really only need him to be. Maybe he's not that guy, but with a compensatory 4th round pick, which is basically a 5th round pick, yeah, I'll take a dice roll here. Why not?
And just pulling this up by a spin, he needs to be better than Kingsley Jonathan day one. I don't think he needs to be better as a player in the 4th round. I think he has to have the possibility of being better. Yeah. And you go into camp and have a legitimate competition between the two. I don't think it's the end of the world, although I think it's highly unlikely with how the Bills covet their drafted players. I don't think it's the end of the world if a 4th round pick doesn't make the roster. That being said, I think Bills fans would absolutely lose their mind if that was the case.
Yeah, probably. All right. With the 133rd overall pick in the 2024 NFL mock draft, cover 1 roundup 3.0. I keep changing the order of the words on that. The Bills select Mohamed Kamara, edge from Colorado State. All right, we're going to move on. Okay, we got some guys taken as expected. All right, here we are. Some interesting picks are available. Oh, man, I always forget about Will Shipley. I like Will Shipley. I'd be okay with taking Will Shipley later in this draft. All right. I really like Malik Mustafa here. I really do.
That's where I was going to go. Yep,
yeah.
That's the pick.
All right, I'm not even going to have a discussion about this. Let's do this. Mm-hmm. With the 144th overall pick in the cover 1 roundup 2024 mock draft 3.0, the Buffalo Bills select Malik Mustafa, safety from Wake Forest. Before I actually make the pick, just for those who are unaware, I'm going to just sort of see how they describe him in this PFF scouting report. He is a throwback tone setter over the middle of the field. His measurables and mentality are reminiscent of Bob Sanders. Does not have the plus athletic ability, specifically fluidity and top speed of Sanders. He does his best work coming from a 2-deep safety shell where he can keep the play in front of him and fire downhill where needed. He is an all-out blitzer even from a deep safety spot. His shorter arms can cause problems when wrapping up tackles, but when he hits players, they feel it. Yeah, I like that. I like that quite a bit. Yeah, I'm taking Malik Mustafa here. Yeah, I like that a lot. All right, moving on. We see some more picks happening. Blah, blah, blah. Zach Zinter. Okay. All right. Let's see what's available for us right now. Any position you want to look at right off the top?
I would start looking at offensive line, just in general. And probably, tackle...
Tackle?
Wait. No. Never mind.
Okay.
Just stay here. So, and I'm not going to pretend like I know all of these players by any means, but Bo Lemare is a player I have heard of.
Yes.
And you had mentioned earlier SEC. He plays in the SEC.
True.
Center. I believe he might be a 3-year starter. I might have made that up in my head.
Well, let's see. You go look at that. I'm going to look at the tackles right now. Because one of the things that Aaron Kromer has done throughout his career has been his teams tend to draft offensive tackles and then convert them to whatever position he feels like they're best at, whether that's center, guard, whatever. So I think tackle or guys that are listed as tackles could be on the table here, even if they decide to play them at guard. Unfortunately, there's not really anybody here that I really recognize more than I do Lemire. Let's look at some people's comments here before we get too further. Bills fans of 83. Kamara gives me Cliff Averill vibes. I loved Cliff Averill when he was playing. He was a very good player when he was in his prime. Noon Alvarez says, what about Zinter? Safety class is kind of deep. Should have taken Zinter. I like Zach Zinter. I like Zach Zinter a good deal. Again, do I like him more than getting a Malik Mustafa or a Muhammad Kamara? Not necessarily. I'm okay with somebody else. I'm okay with taking somebody else over Zach Zinter. You could make an argument for like taking Zach Zinter over a Malik Mustafa. I think that's a reasonable argument, but it is what it is in my mind.
That Cliff Averill comp is damn good, man.
Yeah?
I'm just looking at the Raz scores. They're pretty much the same. Averill had about an inch on Kamara, but the athleticism is about exactly the same.
Very interesting. Very, very interesting. We're gonna have to keep. I'm gonna keep that in mind. I'm filing that in the mental Rolodex.
That's a really good one.
Yeah. So yeah. All right. So do we feel okay about Bo Lemur?
So Lyle Collins signed by the Bills.
Correct.
I think he can be on the out. I think he can be your backup tackle in the event you need him to be your backup tackle.
Yes.
Then I go back to the inside and I say you have Will Clapp, who's is what he is as a backup center, can probably play a little guard if you need him to. Bo Lemur he's played center, he's played guard in college. He was a 3-year starter, so I was right about a college prospect maybe for the first time in my life. I would say you take him and you groom him as a possible starting center in the future. And he has position versatility right now where if an injury did happen, you might be able to plug him in. Unless you have strong feelings about another player.
I do not have strong feelings about another player based on who's available. There's not really anybody that's like popping out to me. So I say with the 160th overall pick in the Cover 1 Roundup Mock Draft 2024 3.0, the Buffalo Bills select Bo Lemur, or however you say his last name. All right, and at pick 163, just a few picks later, we're left with a bigger problem because now I'm running out of names that I recognize and or care about. So, anybody popping out to you? Anybody at all? Literally anyone.
Sorry, I was just checking what Brandon Thorne had to say about the previous player we drafted, and he did mention that one of his single favorite reps at the Senior Bowl was him. So that is kind of exciting to me.
I like that.
Okay, so from the Bills' perspective, at this point in my head, what I'm thinking about is position groups.
Okay.
And what is the position the Bills could add that could compete for the roster?
Mm-hmm.
Trying to think about that. I mean, it could be defensive back, but I'd probably wait even a little longer on that.
Sure.
Wide receiver, we really haven't done the double dip, and
Sure.
I don't think it's crazy to do the double dip. I know that Air Raid Hour, I think it's Air Raid Hour, loves Anthony Gould. I'm not going to pretend like I know anything about him. Bob Means I've legitimately heard of, but it looks like that would be pretty much a reach at this point. I don't know. Is there any position groups that you'd be looking at or players?
I am totally okay with double dipping at wide receiver at this point. I think that that's a reasonable thing to do. Okay, so we have Anthony Gould, and it looks like the chat is very in on Jalen Coker. I say very in. A couple of people said him. Holy Cross, that's very interesting. What are we looking at from us? Okay, 6'3", 213. Okay. A draft and develop wide receiver 4 and 5. I'm okay with that. Smart and versatile route runner with reliable hands. That all sounds fine to me. I mean, yeah, I feel good about that. We in on that?
Yeah, I just want to look at his RAS quick. I think from what I was just reading, he might have some athletic limitations.
Probably.
Not that that's the end. Oh, actually, nope. Jalen Coker, 946 RAS score. Yeah,
Oh.
why not?
Okay. All right. Well, let's do it. With the 163rd pick of the Cover One Roundup 2024 3.0 mock draft, the Buffalo Bills select Jalen Coker, wide receiver from Holy Cross.
I don't know why that seems like a Billsy pick to me,
It does
right?
seem like a Bills.
A player
pick.
from
It's
Holy Cross.
very, yeah.
What players are on the board from Villanova?
Maybe Brian Westbrook Jr. is in this class. I don't know. So many people's kids are in this class. It makes me feel awful. Okay. At pick 200, we're now in round 6. There's a guy on the board here. You're looking at him. I'm looking at him. Let's not pretend that we're not. He's right here, folks. Tory Taylor, punter from Iowa. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. The last time that a punter was taken, it did not end well. I agree with that. Do you take a punter? Do you draft? What's the point in drafting a punter? Listen, when you're getting to this end of the draft scenarios, you're getting guys that are probably either A, not going to make the roster, or B, they're making the roster because they're playing special teams. And if you're going to be playing special teams, why not take a special teams player like Tory Taylor? Because the Bills, I mean, like, sure, bring back Sam Martin. I don't care enough about like him and his abilities to be like, oh, you shouldn't draft a punter because you have Sam Martin. Like, it's not a thing anybody's going to say coming into this draft. So
yeah. And they also do have Matt Hawk signed, but that's not
that's right.
here nor there.
That's basically the same person. I don't care.
Yeah. I don't think it'd be crazy for the Bills to take a punter. Why not draft a player that could have essentially save you some money in the future for a position that you really don't want to ever use? And also, the best way I've heard these late round picks described, especially for teams that are consistently competing for a Super Bowl, and Bills fans that don't think the Bills are competing for a Super Bowl, is just a whole nother topic. But these late round picks are used as forced invites to training camp. So that when the draft is over and there's all these UDFAs, the places the UDFAs want to go is the places they have a chance to make the roster. They don't want to come to a really, really good football team. They'd prefer to go to a less good football team where they could make the roster. Right. So what you do as a good football team is you draft the player in the late round and force them to come to your training camp. A punter come into training camp with a legit shot to beat out a player like Sam Martin and Matt Hawk. I don't hate it at pick 200 plus. So yeah, I would not mind this pick.
On that idea of like drafting a guy to basically be your training camp invite, essentially, as opposed to trying to get them in undrafted free agency. There's a great story from years ago about Sean Payton when he was with the Saints, and it was the end of the draft, like the last couple of picks of the 7th round or whatever. The Saints didn't have any picks left, so they were talking to guys that they were expecting to be undrafted free agents, and they were talking to some quarterback. He was like, hey, we're thinking about bringing you on with the Saints if you're interested. We'd like to have you. And he said, like, oh, sorry, but the Panthers have already offered me this, and I'm planning on going to the Panthers. And so Sean Payton, being Sean Payton, didn't have any picks left. He traded back into the draft just to draft this guy and keep him away from the Panthers, to be like, hey, you're going to be a Saint now. Deal with it.
That's jeez.
It's so stupid, but it's great. Yeah.
I'll also just add quickly, like, if you just go back through the past 3 drafts and look at like some late 6th, 7th round picks that the Bills have taken. So you have Nick Broker, Alex Austin, Luke Tenuta, Balin Spector, Rashad Wildgoose, and Jack Anderson. Those were all, let's get these guys into camp and let's see what they do. They did well. The Bills tried to put them on their practice squad, and they all got scooped, except Balin Spector, who made the roster in part due to an injury. But yeah, the Bills essentially were like, we know you're good enough to be in the NFL. Let's force you to come here. Let's see if you can't beat out somebody and surprise us. If not, we're going to try to sneak you on the practice squad. It almost never works because people are trying to scoop every player the Bills draft at this point. But yeah, it doesn't hurt. And a punter, he has a legitimate shot to 53.
100%.
Like he legit, like a real shot. Not everyone has a real shot to 50.
I agree. All right, with the 200th overall pick in the how do I want to phrase it this time? Cover One Roundup NFL Mock Draft 2024 3.0. The Buffalo Bills select Torrey Taylor Hunter from Iowa because punters are people too. As I'm sure you will hear Rich Eisen say at some point during this weekend. All right. All right, now I'm okay.
Well, I see the name. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. Wait, hold on. You see a name. Which name?
I see Gabe Hall.
You see Gabe Hall. I see Gabe Hall, and I see James Williams.
The giant James Williams.
The giant James Williams. So, what are you thinking?
Well, they did take Johnny Newton, so they
did take Johnny Newton.
Interior. And
we also took Malik Mustafa as well. So
this is true. I was going to say before I saw Gabe Hall that this pick is a defensive back. This pick 204 for the Bills, if they have this pick, will be a DB. So I would be inclined to say you go with your heart here and pick whoever you want. Hey, he's the same height as James Williams, I think.
You know, honestly, that's a good point. He's an inch taller than James Williams. I think that, okay, so if you bring Gabe Hall and Johnny Newton onto this team, along with Ed Oliver, Austin Johnson, Daquan Jones, it's a lot of defensive tackles.
Deshaun Williams.
And Deshaun Williams, right. It's a lot of defensive tackles. And if you bring James Williams on, that's also a lot of defensive backs. So you're kind of crowding rooms here. I think, again, if we're going back to the idea of, like, if you're taking guys that are, you know, potentially not going to make the roster, probably get guys that could play on special teams. I don't know if Gabe Hall could play on special teams. Like, I'm not saying that as, like, I don't know, maybe he's probably not, I don't know, as, like, he can't. I'm saying, like, I legitimately have no idea if he can play on special teams. I really don't. Because maybe James Williams can't either. I have no idea. But I feel, just historically speaking, better about potentially a safety playing special teams than I do a defensive lineman playing special teams.
Yeah, who has a better chance to get to that top 4 area of their position group? And I would probably be inclined to say at this point it's a safety, because that safety is going to have to beat out Cam Lewis
or DeMar Hamlin.
Tackle.
Like, there's,
yeah.
I mean, do you feel like James Williams has the potential to beat out either DeMar Hamlin or Cam Lewis?
I mean, I got into it on the Cover One chat yesterday about how I think Cam Lewis is valuable. But I do think a safety here has a better chance probably of making the 53 than a defensive tackle, just because I don't really see them carrying 5 defensive tackles, and I don't see a player like Gabe Hall beating out Austin Johnson. I think Austin Johnson's here to play legitimate football, and with that first pick being a defensive tackle, I don't think that there's room for a 5th.
All right. Then at pick 204 in the Cover One Roundup 2024 Mock Draft 3.0, the Buffalo Bills select James Williams, safety from the University of Miami, Florida. All right, we're winding down on this draft. We're coming up on the end of the 6th round. We'll come into the 7th round. Do the Bills have 2 7th rounders or 1?
Just a 1.
Just 1. I see it right here. 248. Okay, so it's one of the last picks of the draft. Any position group? Anyone you care about?
Position group wise, I mean, offensive lineman's always fun. They seem pretty set at linebacker, man. Like I always don't mind taking a linebacker, but they got 5 guys under contract right now that I'm comfortable with all 5 being on the football field if they have to be. So I don't really know if there's any value in a linebacker.
Do you want to take Talia Tagovailoa just for the fun of it? just to have the other Tagovailoa in the division.
I mean, if the Bills don't take him, I feel like Tua's going to force the Dolphins to give him a invite. And so you can piss off the Dolphins here. Maybe you're playing a little bit of chess when everybody else is playing checkers. I don't mind that idea.
I'm going to do it because I feel good about this draft, and I like being a little petty, especially with the 7th round pick. Who cares? All right, with the 248th pick in the 2024 NFL mock draft, Cover 1 Roundup 3.0, the Buffalo Bills select, with absolute pettiness, Talia Tagovailoa from the University of Maryland. And with that, this mock draft is now over. All right. We are going to get graded by PFF.
You earned an award.
I earned an award, whatever that means. All right. So they like Jerjon Newton. That's an A+ for us. Javon Baker's a C. Estimate B-, Mohamed Kamara C. Mustafa B+, Lamir C-, Jalen Coker A-, Torrey Taylor A. I love that PFF graded a punter pick as an A, because I guarantee you whoever drafts a punter this weekend, PFF is going to like rake them over the coals.
Oh, yeah.
I can see it coming right now. James Williams a B and Talia Tagovailoa C+ for an overall draft grade of B+.
I also love how Tagovailoa is a C+ as like a joke. Like he's probably not going to get drafted at all. And then they're like, yeah, but that was a better pick than Javon Baker. Like that was a better pick than Javon Baker. It's like, okay, well, PFF. Good job,
the
buddy.
Positional value, I mean, it's just so yeah, I like this. I actually really like this class. The only thing I might change is maybe a corner at some point, maybe. But you could maybe kind of get away with calling James Williams like a Saron Neal type of corner, where like Saron Neal wasn't really much of a corner anyway. So yeah, that's neither here nor there. I don't. If the biggest thing coming out of this class is, maybe they could have taken a corner. Like, okay, cool. If that's my only complaint out of this class, I'm good with that. Like, getting Johnny Newton here is such a steal in my book. Javon Baker, maybe that's a bit of a reach. Maybe. And maybe they trade up a little bit further to get somebody they really, really like. But I still like Javon Baker at 60. I really do. Audric Estime in the 4th round. Mohamed Kamara is basically the last worthwhile edge, I think. At that point, Mustafa is somebody that pretty much everybody seems to like, and everybody seems to be like, yes, that I would like one Malik Mustafa on my team. Thank you. Bo Lamir in round 5, yeah, I think that's a really, really solid pick. Jalen Coker, I'm circling that name and coming back to it because I kind of want to watch this guy now. Torrey Taylor, I mean, come on, an Iowa punter, come on.
They love punting there. They love punting
they love punting more than corn at Iowa, which is saying something. And then you've got James Williams and Talia Tagovailoa. I really like this draft. I really do. I think this is a really good draft. I would be very, very satisfied with this draft. I would feel very good about this draft.
Yeah, I think if this was the draft the Bills had, and we left this draft, and I looked at the Bills depth chart, I wouldn't look at it and see any glaring holes. I'd see a depth chart where I'm comfortable everywhere. I'm excited at other positions. And the team that we had last year compared to this year, you could probably make an argument that it's better. I mean, the safety position still is a concern to me.
Sure.
So maybe Malik Mustafa beats out a Mike Edwards for that, and you have that your rotational 3, kind of the way they were doing it with Rapp and Poyer and Hyde last year, where they were kind of using that sub package. Maybe that's where Mustafa fits in. So you now have created that bunch. I think this would be a very good draft. I think that you'd have some Bills fans, like we saw in the chat today, upset about the defensive tackle in round 1. But to your point, when a really, really, really good football player falls that shouldn't fall, you take him and you figure it out from there.
Just got to take him, man. Just got to take those types of players. Okay. We are an hour and a half deep. The mock draft is done. It's going to be our last bit before we see you all on Saturday, because this show is going to be hosting the third day of coverage for the 2024 NFL Draft right here on the Cover One YouTube channel. So tune in for that. I will take the first couple of hours. I'll try and bring on some guests to try and fill. Listen, if you've never watched day 3 of the NFL Draft, it's a long process. And it's a lot of names that you've never heard of. It's a long process. So it's going to be me. It's going to be some other people. Uber is going to take the second half of that coverage. And yeah, we're gonna make the most of it. We're going to have some people here. It's going to be a good time. We're going to make it as good a time as possible. But before we do all of that, folks, we need to do one last thing. And that is true or rubbish. Let's go. Okay. So, if you've not been here before, if you are unfamiliar with the rules of true or rubbish, let me explain them to you very quickly. In the... I don't know where I was going with that. True or rubbish. I will give Uber a statement. He will tell me if it is true or rubbish. You are all very much encouraged to play along at home. Put your answer in the chat if you think the statement is true or rubbish. And we're just going to go right now. Okay, Uber. True or rubbish? The Bills have 10 picks available in the 2024 NFL Draft. The Bills will use all 10 of those picks to draft 10 players.
Rubbish.
It was rubbish all after all. It was all rubbish.
Yeah.
Easiest one you've ever given me. Yeah, there's absolutely no way they're taking 10. Like, I will be absolutely... If they... I might just get naked on stream if they take 10 players on Saturday. So there's no way they're taking 10 players, dude.
Spin says rubbish. Roy Collins says rubbish. Yeah, I tend to agree with that. Bills fan 78-83 rubbish. Yeah, I would be shocked if they came out of this draft with 10 players. That being said, there's a way to make 10 players count. I mean, I think that this is a good way to get 10 players, honestly. Roy Collins says they'll trade back and get 15. What is the highest number of draft picks since they started doing 7 rounds? Because like there used to be like 20 or 17 rounds or whatever. Wonder what that would be.
Why do I think it's 13?
It's got to be more
I'm
than
not sure.
that.
I'll look it up as you keep going. Yeah.
Yeah. RJ says rubbish. Spin says LOL. Uber, don't threaten Dave with a good time. Okay. All right. No comment. Noon Alvarez says Bean is literally itching to trade up 4 times. He's always itching to trade up. That's just how he is. That is who he is. Do you have an answer? Do you have
14?
14
is the record. It
Really?
was the Dolphins. Was it the Dolphins in 1997?
Interesting.
I might have that wrong. Oh wait.
I feel like there was a draft class.
No. It was the Vikings had 15
Okay.
in 2020.
Yeah, I remember that. They had a ton of late picks. I remember that. It was like a lot of late picks.
I need to look at that draft.
Yeah. Let's see if that
15
was
picks in one draft is insane, dude. That's
It
too
is,
many.
it really is. All right.
Oh my God.
Go. What do you got?
They had 4 7th-round picks, of which only 1 ever played a game. Oh no, 2 played a game in the NFL for a total of 24 games.
That's not bad.
That's actually not bad. No.
Yeah. All right. That makes sense. All right. Okay. True or rubbish? The Bills will follow suit. Wink. With what we did in this draft, and they will draft a punter.
Oh man, rubbish.
Oh,
Rubbish all after all. It was all rubbish.
You don't think so?
Yeah, I think the logic makes sense to do it because I think you get a cheap player for 4 years and you can kind of take that contract that Sam Martin has off the books. I just think the Bills like Sam Martin and they think that his holding abilities will kind of bring Tyler Bass back into form. unless they love some punter. I wouldn't be surprised if they bring a punter in as a UDFA
Sure.
and try to sneak him onto the roster. But I expect them to use their 6th-round picks. If they didn't use them to trade up, do the same thing they did last year and trade down and pick up a 6th-round pick next year and a 7th-round pick, and kind of play that game where you're always keeping picks in the future.
Sure. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Spin says rubbish. Bills fan 7883 says rubbish. Newton Alvarez says rubbish. RJ Melville says rubbish. And Roy Collins says true. Damn it. Yeah, I kind of hope they do. I really hope they do. Just because they can. I know it's a stupid way to look at it, but I want a punter that's not Sam Martin or Matt Hawk. How about that? That's what I want.
I agree.
Let's see. Anything else that I want to true or... Okay, all right. Let's do this. True or rubbish? The Bills will double dip at wide receiver in the 2024 NFL Draft.
True.
This was true. All after all. Can't believe it. It was true.
Yeah.
I don't think that there's some Bills fans that are like, they're going to take one at 28 and they're going to take one in 60. I 100% do not see that. Like, I think I'd be upset if that happened, to be honest, but I expect them to take one in one of those first 2 rounds and then take another one later in the draft, kind of like we did. They have to get 2. They just don't need to do both early.
Spin says true. Bills fan says true. Newton Alvarez says true. Spin says true 50-50. That's not true. That's true or false. Or true or rubbish in this sense, which seems like hedging and cowardly tactics. RJ Melville says true as well. I am also inclined to say true. I think that's a legitimate thing that they will probably end up doing. Bills fan brings up a great question. Does Ayuk count if they trade and draft one? Is that double dipping? I say yes. And if they do get someone like Ayuk, yeah, I'm into that. I'm totally into that. Give me Brandon Ayuk, because you can make that work. You really can, more than you could like a, Justin Jefferson or something like that, because you can extend Brandon Ayuk, for next year when you have more money. That money doesn't have to come onto this year. So, yeah, I feel fine with bringing on Brandon Ayuk, if that's the case. Folks, that's going to be it for us tonight. Thank you all so much for joining us. If you have not left a like or a comment or whatever on this channel or on this page or on this video more specifically, go do so now. It helps us a lot. We really appreciate you all coming out and watching and participating and having a lot of fun with us. I think that this was a great mock draft. It was a great time. I feel like we went through this all pretty quickly and at a good pace. And hopefully the actual NFL draft will go just as smoothly. It won't, but we hope it will. If you have not subscribed to the Cover One YouTube channel, please go do so right now. If you enjoy this video, you get tons more podcasts and videos and breakdowns that are just like this, if not better. You've got the Air Raid Hours, or the Air Raid Hour, which is coming on in about 15 minutes. You've got Under Review with Joe DeRosa. You've got Disguised Coverage. You've got the Film Room. You've got the Cover One Flagship Show. You've got Late Night with Thomas DeLausch. You've got the Cover One College Football Channel with John and Daniel doing Draft Weekly. They do a great job. You're going to want to listen in on those guys throughout the week. John is going to be with Joe and Thomas in Detroit come draft weekend, so he will be part of our coverage on the ground, boots on the ground. And yeah, it's just a really fun channel. It's a great channel to learn a lot about football and get to know everything you want about the Bills and more. And if you are so interested in following us on Twitter, Uber, where can the people find you?
Yeah, follow me at UberHansen on Twitter. I love the draft. I tweet a lot to begin with. I'll be tweeting a lot during the draft, and especially this draft. I spent a lot of time this offseason building out a new draft value chart. So each and every trade that happens, I'm going to have a thread on Twitter, and I will tweet out kind of how the breakdown works, which team got the most value, which team got the least value, not just Bills, every single draft trade over the next 3 days. And then, like David was saying, on Saturday, we'll be live on air. I will definitely have a couple glasses of whiskey during that. So that should be pretty fun for me. I don't know how fun it will be for everybody else as I start mumbling as we get to pick like 245 and I'm losing my damn mind. But it'll be fun. It'll be fun.
You all can find me at DFAUXY or at DFoxy on Twitter. Like I said, I will have the first couple hours for day 3 of the draft. It's going to be a good time. I encourage every one of you to come out and just watch our coverage, not just for day 3, but also for days 1 and 2 as well. We have you covered all 3 days. We got you covered online and at the draft itself. It's going to be a good time. I'm so looking forward to this weekend. I love this weekend every single year. And especially in these last couple of weeks where you just get all the same news over and over and over again, it'll be nice to just have that done and to see exactly what happens and how the NFL will change come this weekend. That is going to be it for us. Thank you all for joining in. We will see you all Saturday. Bye-bye.